Hi everyone, as usual, this is Anto Chávez with Be Latina. Today we're going to be talking to Tiffany Cabán, who's running for City Council of New York, District 22. So she is the candidate right now, and there's a lot that people want to know, and there's a lot of answers that you'll be able to get thanks to this video, which will exist in our page forever. So you can send it to friends and family if they're undecided or if they just want to know more about Tiffany. So let's get started. Hey, how are you, Tiffany?
I'm well. How are you doing? Oh,
I'm
hang on one
doing
second.
well.
Wait, let me just get my dogs back. One moment.
No problem. You're good.
Hi, bud. Okay, thank you.
How many dogs do you have?
I have two dogs.
I can hear them. That's so cute. How are you?
Hanging in. I feel like, like most folks, the benchmark these days is very different, but hanging in.
Yeah. Yeah, so first I would love to have you introduce yourself and just let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name is Tiffany Cabán. I live in Queens, New York. I was born and raised here. I, first started my career as a public defender here in the city, practicing criminal law. So I represented folks that were accused of crimes. And then after a little over 7 years, I did this thing that I thought was completely insane at the time, but really sort of changed the trajectory of the work that I was doing. I ran for district attorney here in Queens on this very bold decarceral platform where we centered the idea that, jail cells and police don't keep us safe, and that we had made, our system was one that was criminalizing poverty, mental health, substance use. It was one that was targeting Black and brown and immigrant and low income folks. And we came very, very close, but we had a good impact. I think we did a lot of really great organizing in a borough of 2.5 million people. We ended up 55 votes shy of winning. And from
55?
55
Oh my
votes
God.
out of 2.5. So also, I know that we're going to be talking about voting, but like my story is one where like I can tell you every single vote matters, and your vote does count, and it makes all the difference in the world. And then from there, I thought about, well, I'm not in this seat, but I'm very clear on the work that I want to do. And so how do I do that? And I joined the Working Families Party as a political organizer. So I've been working up until I'm running for office again, but have been working to help elect progressive and decarceral district attorneys around the country, from Colorado to California to Texas to Michigan and Florida. So that's been really great. And now I'm here running for city council to represent my community. It's another area where just your city council, no matter where you are, has a huge impact on the ways that you relate to the world, and the access to the supports that you have, and all kinds of things. So that's what we're doing now.
Right. And that's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about the specific ways in which you can help people through the city council? So what's this role in the city council? What does it entail? What would you be doing in this position?
Absolutely. So I want to like step back and frame it a little bit. I view the work that I have done throughout my career as one that centers building safer, healthier communities, and really shifting the narrative on what it means to have a safer, healthy community and what we need to have those things.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with really laying bare that so many of our systems are racist and classist, right? And dismantling that and unpacking that. And city council is a place where, one, all politics are local, and at the localist level, you can see the things that are going to impact your daily lives the most. We spend so much time talking about the presidential, which is obviously very important, but if you want to see some immediate changes, your local races are where it's at. And so it's a little bit different around the country, but most city municipal governments, most city councils, at the very least, do legislative work, right? They create laws that impact our lives. And then they also have control over our budgets. And that's huge, because budgets are essentially a moral document, right? They exist and show where our values lie, where we put our money. And so, for example, here in New York City, which is no different from any other city around the country, we put more of our money into policing, prosecution, and jails than we do into education, mental health support, economic, like job development, and education combined. Right, for every dollar we spend on our prison industrial complex, we are spending pennies on the dollar on all of these other areas that we so desperately need and deserve access to. So that's a big thing that our city councils do. And then some city councils, not all of them, this is a really powerful power. And in New York City, we do have it. Your city council might also be in charge of land use decisions, how, where and how things can get built, where you live. And when we talk about the housing crisis, issues with displacement and gentrification, that is a really, really powerful thing to have control and a say in as well.
Right. And so now that we delved a little bit into that, and you've talked about it, but I would love to hear more. What are some of the most important issues that you are addressing in your campaign?
We talk about three really big things, and it is ending our carceral system, right? It is establishing a care economy, and it's bringing a Green New Deal to New York City. And it's also connecting all of those things to, again, our larger systems, right? So making sure that we are centering race and class in our analyses and our solutions to all of these issues. So when we talk about ending our carceral systems, it's really about taking resources from the police and investing them in communities. A lot of people don't know that 90% of what police do is not what they think that they do, right? Police are the people who enforce traffic laws. Police are the people who respond to individuals who are in mental health crisis. Police are in our schools, playing the role of taking up the space and roles of counselors and other school personnel. Police are the people that show up to your door when you're evicted from your home. It's an officer in a uniform with a gun on their waist belt, and they do all of these different functions where there are other people that are way more equipped to do that work. Like, what if we had mental health experts that we could call to respond to somebody who is in some sort of mental health crisis at any given moment? What if we had restorative justice programs in our school and more counselors and more teachers in our schools for our kids rather than police officers? What if we had different, we're seeing all of this, a national uprising around police violence, recognizing that every interaction with the police, unfortunately for Black and brown folks, and particularly Black men, can be lethal interactions. And so how can we lessen those interactions to keep people safer? And then, establishing a care economy is really making sure that we're protecting the dignity of all workers, right? Making sure that they are paid a living wage so that they can support themselves and their families, not on 3 jobs, not on 2 jobs, but on 1 job with a 40-hour work week, right? Bringing obviously we have, bringing a Green New Deal into the space is this is an existential crisis. We have X number of years to make sure that our planet stays habitable for human beings, for our children and their children and their children's children. And again, connecting all of these things to structural racism. Environmental justice is very much so a racial justice issue. I was listening to a panel recently of climate justice advocates, and they said this thing that I can't get out of my head. And they were like, well, if we have 10 years to solve the climate crisis, we have 4 years to solve racism. And I was like, yo, that's real. But
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But part of that is opening up our streets, making sure that we have more bike lanes, that we are decreasing car traffic, that we are, stopping the use of fossil fuels and investing in green infrastructure and creating green jobs and all of those different things.
Yeah. So now that you're talking about a panel and just what people need and also what they want. So once you're in office, how are you going to make sure that you are uplifting the voices of the most marginalized?
It starts well before you get into office. You know, my background is as an advocate for the most marginalized in our communities, right? Like as a public defender, almost all of my clients were obviously indigent, meaning that they couldn't afford to pay for a private attorney. But again, overwhelmingly, right, my clients were Black, brown, queer, immigrant, low income, part of the disabled community, all of these folks that experience systemic discrimination and oppression at the hands of our structures, right? And so I like my entire professional career started with the idea that I was there to advocate and uplift somebody else's story and center their story and you know, really bring a person's humanity and lived experience and how they interact with the systems that we're forced into. And also, you know, my background as a community organizer. The beautiful thing about policy development, when that's your background, is, you know, the first time around, and it's very similar to what we're doing now. So I wrote my policy platform sitting on my couch with my dog, you know, and like every single policy had a client attached to it, had a face, had a name, had a family, had a story attached to it. And then from there, making sure that we were talking to community organizations that were doing work with the folks impacted by that decision. And that, when you do it that way, not only are you going to have sound, strong policy that really meets the needs of folks that you're trying to represent and resonates with them. It gives them a reason to be excited, to be re-engaged in political processes that they might be disillusioned by because the system has not been serving them for so long. And it creates an accountability structure because those are the people that are going to throw down for you. Those are the people that are going to get out the vote for you. And so when you're in office, those are the people that you're going to look to make sure that you're continuing to get it right.
Right. And I think it's super important that you're talking about your background as a community organizer and the fact that you were on the ground, because that's also why you know firsthand how important the vote is. So can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, why specifically and particularly the Latinx vote is essential this election?
Absolutely. So I will say this, voting is important, but it is one strategy of several that is really necessary. Like you have to vote, but you also have to like be in this, you know, be in the streets, standing with your neighbors. There are folks that ask me, Tiffany, I want to be an advocate or an activist. I want to do some of the things that I see you and other people are doing, but I just don't know how to do it. And I even tell folks that really the hardest place to be that advocate or activist is at your kitchen table. That is where it begins. Those are where the hardest conversations have. It is with your, you know, your mom or your dad is with your tia or your tío, whoever it is. Sometimes that's where real work that needs to happen. And I connect that to voting and this upcoming election, right? Like this is the most important election of our lives. We have Trump, who is in office. He is, I mean, to put it simply, he's a fascist that has not been serving our communities and been doing a lot of harm to our communities. And we can turn this election. Like there are 32 million eligible, you know, Latinx voters across the country. We are a strong, important voting bloc, and it is through voting that we force elected officials to center our needs in their policies, because they look to see who came out, who voted, you know, what communities are they from, what are their backgrounds, and they listen more closely and develop their policies around those folks that are showing up. That's just a fact of how our electoral system works. And obviously, you know, 32 million Latinx voters, we're not a monolith, we're not all alike, but there are some very common things that, you know, are true for all of us. And we also have to vote as Latinx folks. We have to vote for our neighbors and our family members who can't vote. There are tons of Latinx folks who are not eligible to vote, who consistently get the short straw, right? When it comes to what our government provides. And we have to vote for the most vulnerable of us. And that's really important too.
Right. And I think also there's a huge focus on the presidential election, of course, because it's very important, like you said, especially in the past decade, even more. It's just incredibly important. But and this is not new, there's never enough focus on local elections. So that's
down
why
ballot is so important. Yeah. This is the one thing I'll say about that too is, you know, I don't know where folks landed on the presidential, but I will be voting for Biden and Harris. But like, was Biden the top of the ticket that I dreamed of? No, right? And so, if we are going to have the president of our dreams, if we are going to have, you know, a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren, for example, the way that we get there is by building a bench, right? It is by electing progressive, you know, diverse electeds at every level of government. Because also at the end of the day, too, we could elect a great president, but if we don't have a federal and a state and a local, you know, legislative body that can execute their vision, right? That has enough votes to push that policy and turn it into law and all of those different things, then the president is really, like, their hands are tied in a lot of ways. So we have to build a bench, and the down ballot races are actually what I am very, very excited about. I am going to walk into the ballot box looking to elect every progressive, better yet leftist, you know, Black, brown, queer candidate that I possibly can, that I know is going to fight for working class communities of color, period.
Well, thanks so much, Tiffany, for joining us today. I think my last question would be, how can people get involved? How can people volunteer and, you know, do more than just vote?
Yeah, there are so many ways to get involved. I'm going to plug my campaign, but also going to talk to you about, you know, campaigns across the country. If you want to check out what we're doing, you can follow me on Instagram at Cabán for Queens. I'm on Twitter. It's Tiffany, I don't know what the / is. What is that called? Cabán on Twitter. And then check out our website, and it's Cabán, FOR Queens.com. Please, if you can, make a small contribution. Every dollar helps. Sign up to volunteer, to phone bank. But then also, like, look, you know, go online and Google and look at what's on your ballot. Find out who's running. Just pick a race. Pick, you know, whether it is your state legislative body, whether it is your Congress member, whether it is your city council, whatever it is. Pick a race and do a deep dive. Do a little bit of research and find a candidate you like and make some calls for them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And also, if you know anyone who has doubts, send them this video. This is how you get them the answers that they need in order to make an informed decision for the election, and in order to get them engaged and start volunteering with Tiffany and with other candidates. So thanks so much, Tiffany, for joining us today. I really, really appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.